What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I will take you guys through the best teams for the upcoming Game Week 5. So if you guys are new to this series or have simply just forgotten what we do in this best team series, we cover two different team selections. The first one revolves around the top 1000 template, or more specifically, the highest owned players within the top 1000 managers in the overall ranks at the current moment. The second selection revolves around Game Week 5 specifically, and it's basically a free hit draft. I went over to Fantasy Football Fix and I select the best predicted team or the highest predicted point scorers for the upcoming Game Week 5. So both these two selections are really useful throughout the past seasons. I love kind of analyzing these two selections. The top 1000 template allows you to get some comparison going, look at the differences, look at the similarities between your own team and the top 1000 template, so you can kind of act on those decisions and either choose to transfer these players in or simply just ignore it and try good differential. The second selection of the best predicted team is going to be quite useful for the upcoming game weeks, as the majority of FPL managers look to wildcard in Game Week 7 or Game Week 8. So what you guys can do with this selection is either plan those free transfers or plan these short-term punts, which will allow you to maximize your overall rank boosts up until you use the wildcard. If you're not using the wildcard, also perfectly fine to look at these teams and get a little bit of analysis going, as you can look to take some short-term punts or maybe just plan some free transfers for some medium to the long-term decisions. But if you guys are interested to see both these teams, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So going over the top 1000 template, these are the highest owned players within the top 1000 best managers in the overall ranks. And we're going to start off with the bench. So like we usually do with the bench, because it's the most boring part of any kind of team selection, on the top 1000 template, the bench sometimes is a little bit weird because we do have more highly owned options favored on the bench besides maybe some more budget options. But not in this case. We have some really good budget enablers, and this just shows you the variety and the options that we have in this budget enabler department, especially in the defense. So starting off with the midfield, the budget enabler of choice in the top 1000 template is going to be Brownhill, and unfortunately there's not too much between the 4.5s in the midfield department. I think the most you're going to get out of them is a maximum of 3 points if maybe they keep a clean sheet, but maybe in the upcoming game weeks you'll see a standout 4.5 option. But right now I don't really have a favorite in terms of those midfielders. But going on to the defense, this is where the budget enablers really do shine, and we have 3 options, and 2 out of the 3 options in this top 1000 template are my personal favorites as well. So starting off with Amati, he's definitely the option that I would not be considering. Has lost his place at Leicester now that the main centre backs are back from injury, so I don't think Amati is going to get anywhere near the starting 11 anytime soon. So if you guys do own him, I wouldn't be expecting him to play, and unfortunately that's just the kind of situation that you're in by taking that risk of him starting the opening couple game weeks. The next 2 defenders I'm perfectly fine with. The one on the bench we'll focus on because we are kind of discussing the bench. It's going to be Livramento, and I do think the Southampton fullback has cemented that space. Now this might not be a long-term nailed option, but I do think at least for the medium short term, I do think is a good option to go for. And we have seen Southampton improve a little bit defensively, kept a clean sheet against West Ham on the weekend, and Livramento got those points. If you guys managed to get him off the bench, well done on that one. But I do think from an attacking point of view, you can also maybe offer some crosses and some set pieces now that he is also a fullback. So if you guys do want a cheap option, I would recommend Livramento. He's probably my favorite option at this budget price point, besides maybe the Norwich assets of Brandon Williams or Omar Badmadeli. But now going on to the starting 11 and talking about the cheap budget enabler in defense, it's going to be Shane Duffy from Brighton. Now I don't know if this is going to be more of a long-term move. I think at least for the short term maybe, but Brighton have recently been racking up a couple of clean sheets, so I don't really know if Graham Potter's going to want to kind of shake up things too much defensively now that they are in a little bit of good run of form. So I think Shane Duffy is probably my second favorite option, but if I was on a wild card, I don't know if I would be looking at the Brighton centre back, as there might be other options in and around that price point that are slightly better, for example like a Livramento. Going on to the goalkeepers, we do have Schmeichel on the bench there, a return from last week's best team. We saw a little bit of rotation there, but now he has firmly come back into the lineup. Not really highly owned in the top 1000, so I wouldn't really look at him as an option from a defensive point of view, but I think the option that I definitely would be looking at is going to be Sanchez from Brighton. Shane Duffy's teammate comes in at 4.5. I've said this throughout preseason, through the team selections, my personal favorite 4.5 option. I don't really see him going anywhere in my own current team. If you guys are on a wild card, I guess you could maybe look at other options, we do have Saar from Wolves with some nice fixtures coming up. Wolves defense looks quite strong, so maybe we will see a rotation of that defense coming into the top 1,000. But I think right now, Robert Sanchez is perfectly fine to go for at that 4.5 price point. The next two defenders, completely template there. Luke Shaw, Trent Alexander-Arnold. I do think Luke Shaw will be phased out slowly in the next couple game weeks, and the only reason for this is I think from game week 7 onwards, United's fixtures don't look great at all, and I think we're going to see an influx of Chelsea defenders coming into this top 1,000 template. Trent Alexander-Arnold, on the other hand, don't think he'll be going anywhere after an assist, clean sheets, and maximum bonus points on the weekend against Leeds. Perfectly fine option to keep, and I think a great option going forward. Has kind of opened this big debate of going with him or maybe stacking another premium striker like a Lukaku in your starting 11. And I think I personally favor the Trent move because he's just such a consistent point scorer. And in terms of value per million, he actually comes out quite cheap. Going on to the midfield, we have had a big shake-up, and you can guess why. It's going to be CR7 in that striker position, and it seems like the player that's made way for CR7 is going to be Bruno Fernandes. So it does look like the top 1,000 is slightly favoring Adama Traore, but I wouldn't really look into this too much because he is quite lowly owned. Only 13.2% of managers in the top 1,000 do own him, but I guess out of the other midfielders, there seems to be quite a lot of rotation, and it seems like the top 1,000 go for a variety of different options as their fourth midfielder. The other three options are pretty nailed. We have Ben Rama, Salah, and Greenwood as really high ownerships there. Greenwood kind of the more differential out of the three. Mo Salah not going anywhere in my own team and in the top 1,000 template. Such a consistent option in terms of FPL, and we saw him score 100 goals. The 5th or 6th fastest player to score 100 goals in the Premier League. So I mean, massive stat to go for there, and I think he's only going to improve that throughout this Premier League season. Greenwood, as I mentioned, has the lowest ownership out of these three template midfielders, and we did see tonight him being rested in the Europa League. Rested, rotated. There's been a little bit of a debate over on FPL Twitter about that one, but I tend to think that he was rested. Same with Varane for this upcoming weekend fixture, and 70% is still pretty decent, and it just shows you if you guys don't have Greenwood and he manages to bang in the upcoming game weeks, you might be struggling to regain those points. Ben Rama is probably the one midfielder that I do think is on the chopping block after quite an early substitution on the weekend against Southampton. I think he was taken off on the 62nd minute mark. I do think the top 1,000 will look to maybe transfer him out to go for some more punts over these upcoming game weeks. Going on to the forward line, the big addition has been Cristiano Ronaldo for United. A great addition, to be honest, especially if you guys did it for Bruno Fernandes and captain Ronaldo for game week 4, as that would have been a nice net of points, even if you guys did take a hit. Antonio, another really high-owned option. Unfortunately, didn't really get much against Southampton, and now picked up a red card, 2 yellow cards, resulting in a 1-game ban. So are you guys taking Antonio out? Are you keeping him? That's been kind of the debate, and if you guys didn't watch the Ultimate Guide video yesterday, I'll put in the link down in the description below for you guys to check it out. And then the final option is going to be DCL, who unfortunately has had a broken toe and also seems to have combined that with a quad injuries. So Rafa Benitez came out last night before their game against Burnley and said that Calvert-Lewin will be missing the next 2 to 3 weeks at a minimum, and therefore if you guys do own DCL, it might be time to ship him out to another option. In terms of the top 1,000 team, looks relatively good. You can see that we are slowly shifting into some more differential options here. Adama Traore coming in at less than 50% owned. I think these players are going to slightly creep in to that top 1,000, and if they do end up performing quite well, could really become template options that we simply have to bring in if they do have good fixtures. So now going on to the next talking point, and this is something that I've kind of added on to this best teams video, and it's going to be the transfers that I expect the top 1,000 template to make, or these managers to make. And the simple reason for this is that it's all good and well having a template, but that's a past template. We don't know the transfers that these managers are making, and unfortunately we'll only find out after that game week has kind of commenced, and we'll see what that template has kind of shifted to. So my prediction for these transfers and what I think the template will shift to is it's first going to be DCL out, as over half the top 1,000 managers do own Calvert-Lewin, and the second option, the less important one, is we're going to be Ben Rama out to one of the other midfielders. So I think 100% the most popular transfer this week going into game week 5 is going to be DCL out, and I think the replacement's going to be Patrick Bamford from Leeds. So we did have some news coming out of a potential hamstring strain for Patrick Bamford, because apparently before he started an interview, he said that his hamstrings were feeling a little bit tired, a little bit stretched. I can't remember the exact word that he said, but I think that's perfectly kind of expected. If you guys have played sports, have played football, you know after 90 minutes or after a football match, your muscles are just generally a little bit tired, and I think this is the exact scenario that Bamford had. I think if I had to play 90 minutes of Bielsa ball with 10 men against Liverpool, my muscles would also feel a little bit strained. So I wouldn't be looking too much into this, but we do also have that Leeds press conference coming up on Thursday or Friday, and the Leeds manager is usually quite transparent with his injury news, so I definitely wouldn't be worried about that. But if you guys are looking to bring Bamford in earlier on, I would probably wait until the press conference has concluded. There might be other options that are also being considered for the striker position. We have Raul Jimenez that also has some nice fixtures coming up. We have some other options in and around that I don't really know if they're going to be considered. I think of the top 1,000, don't own Ronaldo. That seems to be quite a popular transfer in as well. But I think 100% Bamford is going to be a shift in that top 1,000 template. And we almost have to prepare for that if you guys don't own the lead striker. The next transfer that I think will be quite popular if these managers don't own DCL is going to be Ben Rama out to maybe another option like an Adama Traore or maybe an Ismail Assar. Also notice that Rafinha isn't highly owned in the top 1,000, so I think he's also going to be a nice transfer in considering those nice Leeds fixtures. So kind of accompanying Bamford there is going to be Rafinha, and I think any of these transfers are going to be super popular and you guys have to prepare for them if you are chasing the top 1,000. But now going on to the second team of this best teams video, and that's going to be the best predicted team specifically for game week 5. So as I always say, I went over to Fantasy Football Fix, went to their assistant manager tool, I sorted the transfers for a wild card, and then I turned the bench slider down to 0% because I don't really care about the bench after all. Having said that though, the algorithm did kind of produce quite a high scoring bench. You can see that Dennis from Watford, I think he's about 5.0 million, so quite an expensive option to be placed on the bench. But maybe if you guys are wildcarding using a free hit, you can consider him, as I think that is quite a good fixture against Norwich. The next two players, Omar Madeli, was nice to see that he's in my own personal team and he actually started on the weekend against Arsenal. So maybe he looks nailed for a spot, but I still think there might be some rotation there. But at least it's another player that could potentially start on my bench. Scarlett Foster definitely won't play. I think Foster still has a little bit of a knock currently. So he's basically confirmed out with an injury, but we don't really care about the bench. We're simply focusing on the starting 11. So starting off in goal, a little bit of a weird pick here by the algorithm. It's going to be Hugo Lloris against Chelsea. I think this is a really strange kind of pick for keeper, and I would have probably gone for more of a cheaper option that has a better fixture, such as maybe looking at a similar price point with Sarr from Wolves, or maybe looking at a Bachmann against Norwich or someone like that. So I personally don't really agree with Lloris, but I think he has been one of the more high scoring goalkeepers, so maybe that's why the stats from a goalkeeper point of view, maybe the save points are looking quite strong for Lloris, and that's why maybe the algorithm does favor him. Going on to the back line, I really have no complaints with the four defenders. Quite an interesting formation that the algorithm has picked out. It's going to be a 4-5-1, which kind of just shows you for the upcoming game week how much value is stored in that midfield department. But the four defenders that the algorithm has chosen, Trent Alexander-Arnold against Crystal Palace at Anfield, no complaints there. Great fixture for the Liverpool defender. We then have a double up of the Wolves defenders with Marcel and Semedo against Brentford. Now Brentford really haven't kind of kicked on since the start of the Premier League season with that win over Arsenal, and I think from an attacking point of view haven't really been great, and Wolves have looked quite strong defensively. So I'm favouring a clean sheet from the Wolves side of things, and I do think if you guys looked on the weekend, you saw how attacking these Wolves fullbacks are. Semedo maybe unlucky not to score a goal, Marcel with 2 assists. I mean, these defenders are getting so high up in that 5 at the back formation that Wolves do play, so I really would recommend bringing one of these Wolves assets in if you guys don't own them. The final defender to look at is going to be Diaz against Southampton at home, and I do think this is going to be quite an easy clean sheet for Man City against Southampton. Southampton not really looking that strong. Danny Ings out of the lineup. We have had that new striker that's come into them, but hasn't really hit the ground running too much. So really do favour the defensive returns for Man City, and I think Diaz always does offer that attacking threat off those set pieces. Now moving on to the midfield department, and we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. There's no Mo Salah in the best predicted team. It's actually going to be Sadio Mane. So one, this could be because actually they wanted to save a little budget. The algorithm needed to fit a more cheaper option in the midfield, so they've gone for Sadio Mane. But on the second hand, the stats for Sadio Mane have actually been stronger than Mo Salah. If you guys did watch the Leeds fixture, you would understand why. I mean, Sadio Mane should have at least had a hat-trick in that fixture. He simply just couldn't finish anything. A little bit like Adama Traore, was getting some Adama Traore flashbacks there in that Liverpool game, but I just think that Mane, if he did finish those chances, he would definitely be more considered for these upcoming game weeks. So that's why Sadio Mane is actually preferred over Mo Salah, and I think he is preferred as the captaincy option for this game week by the algorithm, but I would still probably stick with Mo Salah, as I just think he's a little bit more consistent and maybe slightly better of a finisher. The algorithm also favours that Liverpool fixture, and they've doubled up with a Diego Jota in that midfield department. Right now, Firmino hasn't returned to training, so I think that Jota will be fine for the next couple game weeks, and I think against Crystal Palace, this could be a really high scoring game for the red side of the fixture. We then have another double up of Man City midfielders with Ferran Torres and also Jack Grealish, and I do honestly agree with this. I think Man City should put a couple past Southampton, and I think that's probably historically they always kind of do, and because this game is a home fixture, only acts better for them, and that's why I think 2 attackers, if you are going to free it or look at the best predicted team from Man City, is perfectly understandable. Now, out of all the Man City attackers, I would probably favor these 2 options. I think that Ferran Torres has cemented that centre forward spot. Kevin De Bruyne is back in training, but I don't know exactly if they're going to use Kevin at that centre forward position, and we also have Phil Foden that could maybe play there, but I think right now Ferran Torres is quite consistent. I would only monitor the game that's happening actually tonight for Man City's point of view, to just monitor the injury news and also how many minutes these 2 players are getting. Jack Grealish also quite nailed in my opinion, and I do think he's quite a favourable option against Southampton, so I can understand why both these players are in, and if you guys do own one of these 2, you might even consider Campsy option from a differential point of view. The final play in the midfield is going to be Ismaila Sarr against Norwich. Now, perfectly understandable why the algorithm favours this fixture, because Ismaila Sarr has been on relatively good form. The stats aren't that great, but usually he does perform against maybe some of the easier teams, and Norwich are definitely an easier side, probably the fixture that you guys should be targeting. Only kind of hindrance is that it is an away fixture for Watford, but I definitely think that they could still score in this game, and if they're going to score, Ismaila Sarr will probably be involved. Now, the final play in the starting 11, no kind of question marks about this. CR7, after a really good game, kind of his second debut for United, 2 goals. I think he's going to continue this run of form over these next 2 fixtures. The next one is West Ham, which is probably a little bit of a tougher game than the next one against Aston Villa, and it is an away game, so the London Stadium is going to be quite hard to maybe play at. West Ham have also been quite a solid side, but defensively have been a little bit of question marks around them, so I think that Ronaldo can definitely score on this one. I just don't know if I'd be stacking the United assets, and that's why the best predicted team only has one of them. But if you guys had to predict what the best team would be for upcoming game week 5, what would it be? Drop it in the comments down below. Let's get a little bit of a conversation going. You can even highlight some options that you think will be quite high scorers, and if you don't agree with this team, let me know why you think it's wrong. This is basically a wrap of the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did, and subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed yet. I'd also appreciate some feedback on the thumbnails. I've changed some things up. If you guys did watch the Ultimate Guide yesterday, you can also comment on that thumbnail, as I'm trying to switch things up and make things a little bit better. I will see you guys tomorrow in the team selection. Otherwise, enjoy the Champions League football and make sure you are monitoring your FPL players. I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.